Hi, I'm Jack Scalia, and welcome to our show, Proud to Serve. Sometimes I'm asked about my politics. It's simple. I stand for the national anthem, I believe in the red, white, and blue, mom's apple pie, a dog named Spot, and I always support our men and women in uniform who serve and protect our country as well as our first responders. However, that's me. But this show, Proud to Serve, is about our guests. People who have faced their fair share of trials and tribulations and have found a way to negotiate their way through them, honoring their creation, trusting their instincts, believing in their dreams, and creating their destiny. Our guest today is a great example of that. I've known many people in my life, and I've known people that have been presidents, Hall of Famers, Cy Young Award winners, and met amazing individuals. However, our next guest, there is only one of him. As we fast approach the 17th anniversary of September 11th, 2001, this man distinguished himself at that day. And people who are anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 years old who may not have been born at that time, their parents will tell them where they were on that day that changed all of our lives forever. Our guest today is retired Lieutenant FD NY Joe Torrillo. Hey, Joe, welcome to the show.
Jackie. Hey, thanks for the opportunity. This is great.
Pal Joey.
Pal Joey and that's it, Uncle Jackie. People watching are probably going to think like this is the witness protection program, like it's some maximum security jail. They ain't going to believe this is really going on.
Well, Joey, the reason why I say there's only one of you, I mean, your story is truly unique. And I know you've told it 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. However, when I've been around and I've listened to it, I'm always fascinated by it. And what makes Joe unique is that he had both of the towers fall on him on September 11th. First the first one, the second one went down, and that also hit him. So Joe, just to briefly, before we start going into other stories, tell us about that day, where you were going, what you were doing, and what happened.
All right, well, first of all, I think I got to clarify something. There's actually two of me. The other one's a girl. I'm a twin. So I thought you would find that funny. And for people who don't believe that I'm the best, there ain't nobody better. And if you don't believe it, heck, man, I saw myself. Yeah, I mean, that was a day, Jack, this coming September obviously will be 17 years that we're going to commemorate the worst attacks on American soil in recent memory. And haven't been one of the few survivors, and of course, people have heard my story, and when they hear it, they want to hear it 100 more times, only because it seems to be one of the most interesting and ironic stories that anybody has ever heard when it actually surrounds that day. There's thousands of stories that have been told about September 11th. People just seem to think that my story is one of the most ironic that they've ever heard any time in their life. And I was there for the whole incident, declared dead for 3 days. And I think the interesting part of this whole story, really, and people want to hear it, is how the day really started. Mm-hmm. So I want to just kind of go backwards first and take you through a timeline so it becomes part of the culmination of the story. Started my career back in January of 1981 with the New York City Fire Department. Didn't really necessarily think I was going to become a fireman. I had gone to school and I was studying structural engineering. I'm a carpenter, plumber, electrician by trade. I just like creating, I like building. That's who I was when I was a kid. I wanted to build buildings with my life. And the test came out for the fire department back in the 1970s, and a lot of the young kids back in Brooklyn were going to be a cop or a fireman, or if you're Irish, you're going to become a priest or be a bartender, right? But anyway, my friends had an extra application and took the test with them, and they all failed, and I passed the test. And I think I took the appointment into the fire department just to get them all angry, because they all wanted to be firemen so bad. But anyway, it was probably the best decision in hindsight that I ever made. So I become a fireman, I graduate the fire academy, and of all 357 firehouses that they could arbitrarily place me to begin my career as a new fireman, the fire department chose the firehouse right across the street from the World Trade Center. It was a brand new firehouse. It actually used to sit on the grounds of the World Trade Center before the World Trade Center was built. In order to build the towers, they had to knock down 186 old buildings built in the 1800s. One of them was a firehouse. And the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, who paid to build the towers, made an agreement with the fire department. If they allowed them to knock down the firehouse with all the buildings, they would build a new one across the street. And more so for their interest because they wanted a dedicated firehouse close to this new complex, the biggest buildings in the world. So they build this new firehouse. I graduate the fire academy, and bingo, they placed me in this firehouse. And now I'm back as a firefighter protecting these towers, as opposed to the days when I was in an engineering program. I used to go there and study them when they were going up. And I spent the first 16 years of my career in Engine Company 10, Ladder Company 10. We were basically in the shadow of the South Tower, 150 feet away. And of course, over 16 years, me and the other firefighters from that particular firehouse, we would respond 10, 15 times a day into that complex of 7 different buildings that comprise the World Trade Center. The 2 of the 7 obviously being the Twin Towers. So, as you could imagine, I had a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience with the World Trade Center, and I had an affection for those towers more as an engineering student than as a fireman, because I had studied them so intensely before I decided to, take a left turn and, pursue a career as a firefighter. And after about 16 years in that firehouse, I think I was ready for a change. I was ready, with no pun intended, to start climbing the ladder. I was going to become a lieutenant and a captain. I just passed the most difficult lieutenant's exam that was ever given. And in 1996, on September, I was promoted to lieutenant. And it was like, it was a big step in my career, because I was now going to study for captain. And shortly thereafter, about 4 months later, it was New Year's Eve of 1996, going into 1997. It was the first New Year's Eve I had ever worked. And I was working in Brooklyn, a very busy area, somewhere not too far from where I was born and raised, and an alarm came into the firehouse, and the ball had just come down in Times Square to usher in the new year, and we were responding to this incident with a woman who was trapped in a fully involved burning building, and we were the first engine company to get to the scene. And in that rescue attempt, my left thumb was almost completely cut off of my hand when firefighters had gone up to the roof and broke out a glass skylight. As I was going up the stairs, the skylight went through my glove, it ripped my thumb off, it was hanging off. They rushed me to the hospital, and I ended up in microsurgery, and I was out of work for about a month. And the fire department said, you know what, you got to come to headquarters. You're going to be out of work for about a year, and you're going to have to take a desk job working in headquarters while you're recuperating. You can't sit at home and get a paycheck. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm a team player. I'll do whatever I have to do. And so I had my arm in a cast from the surgery. I get on a bus, and I'm going to headquarters in Brooklyn. I keep thinking, what the heck am I going to do in this building for the next year? I don't have any office skills. I don't even know how to use a computer. I'm a carpenter, plumber, electrician. I'm a tradesman. I have no knowledge of working in office buildings. What am I going to make me do? Answer telephones? I mean, honestly, if you called headquarters and I answered, what would you think? Honestly.
Is this a joke?
No, it's not a joke, but what would you really think? Tony Soprano's house, boom, end of story, right? I mean, I don't have the voice to be answering public telephones. But anyway, I show up at headquarters, and there were various assignments that they could have placed me in, but they decided to put me in the Office of Fire Safety Education. I didn't even know we had an Office of Fire Safety Education. I didn't know who they were or what they did. But the guy that was handing out the assignments, I asked him, he says, I don't know what they do. They're up on room 712 on the 7th floor. Get in the elevator, go up there and introduce yourself. They'll give you something to do. So I had my arm in a cast. I got in the elevator, 7th floor. I get off and walk into the hallways. I see room 712. I knock on the door. I open up the door. I walk in. I bump into an old friend, Tommy Tropia. We were firefighters many years before. I'm now a lieutenant. He's a captain. He says, hey, Joey, what are you doing here? He says, I heard you got hurt. Yeah, I told him about the fire on New Year's Eve. He says, what are you doing here? I said, I don't know, Tommy. He said, I got to work in the Office of Fire Safety Education. He says, great. He says, I'm running the program. I said, really? I said to myself, how bad is this going to be? My friend is going to be my boss, right? I said, Tommy, I says, what do you do here? He says, I don't know, I just got here. In essence, it was a whole group of firefighters, who were recuperating from various injuries and illnesses, and because we couldn't work in a firehouse, they would send us out Monday to Friday to all the schools in New York City and talk to the kids about preventing and surviving a fire. And I said, Tommy, look, let's get something straight. Number one, I'm not a teacher by trade. I don't have public speaking experience. I don't have any college credits in education. I don't really think I belong here. He says, Joe, nobody belongs here. I said, all right, Tommy, look, I'm a team player. You know what? I'll do anything. Just help me get through this year. He says, look, don't worry about it. Hang around the office. Then we, learn how to use a computer, answer phones, do some payroll with me, make some scheduling. And after about 4 months of just hanging around trying to figure out what it's like working in an office, one of the guys in the unit with me called in sick, and Tommy needed me to go out and cover his presentation in the school. He said, Joe, you think you can go out? I said, all right, Tommy, you know what? All right, give me a smoke detector, give me a book of matches, you know what I mean? I'll take my firefighting clothing, I'll get up in front of the kids. Chances are there might be a good-looking teacher in that class. Yeah, that's all I'm really interested in. And anyway, so I went into the front of the classroom, and I got through like a 45-minute presentation. And you know what? It was a life-changing event because I loved it. I didn't know that I had some kind of a hidden talent to teach.
Yeah, it's called talking.
Yeah, you know what it is. No, you know what it is. You know, you come from Brooklyn, New York. We're Italians. We talk. You know, we engage people. And I guess I always had that hidden talent. But when I really look back, I think I was always a natural good communicator. And if you're a good communicator, you know what, people will listen to you. And so what happened was I was going out on a regular basis. I wanted to do this more and more, and I couldn't get enough of it. And I got so good at doing this, they got rid of my boss and named me the director of the whole program. And you know, still till today, I really think he thinks that I orchestrated that move, that I wanted his job and I didn't. And you know, back in Brooklyn, you know, Italians, you don't pull things like that. You know, there's a price.
You stepped on toes.
Yeah, you know what you know where I'm going with that. You know, we won't say it on camera, but in any event, I'm now the director of the fire department's public education program, and I decided that, you know, for as long as I would stay in that position before I went back to the firehouse, I really wanted to make this a respected program, and I wanted to see if we could really make a difference in the amount of fires and fatalities. Can we reduce that by bringing the public in with this partnership with us in preventing and surviving fires? Because my theory was that the public is a partnership in fire prevention, and then the most important partner in the partnership because they're always there before the fire starts.
Right.
We get there after the fact. They know their buildings way better than we'll ever know it. They got a vested interest in their family, their property, and when we come upon the scene of a fire, the hardest part about our job is we have a lot to learn in a short period of time under the worst conditions. So it was like empowering the public to really take this matter seriously about reducing the hazards in their home, trying to prevent the fire, and if they couldn't prevent the fire, how might we teach them the skills to survive it? So I started thinking about what we were trying to accomplish, and I started talking about the educational process as a whole, and I realized that kids, as a whole in general, kids like having fun when they learn. Kids like, they're multi-sensory, you know? And so I thought that if we were going to be serious about reducing fires and fatalities through the medium of educating the public, we should have a learning center where kids can go on a school trip.
Right.
And I sold the idea to Mayor Giuliani, and Mayor Giuliani loved the idea. You know, he loved anything that made New York City, you know, a better city and made his administration look good. And I ended up with a $3 million budget. And you know what? There's an old saying that goes like this: be careful what you wish for, because you might get what you want.
Right.
I had no idea what the heck I was doing. I sold this great grandiose idea of having a public education center in regards to reducing fires, but I had no idea what it could and should be because there was no other place like this in the world.
Right.
So I'm kind of walking around now with egg on my face. Everybody has all this anticipation. We're not moving forward. And so what I did was I took the 5 most common causes of fire where people lose their lives every single day all across the world, and I brought them to life in a very Disney quality and a Broadway type of show in this new venue called the Fire Zone. We're on East 51st Street, half a block up from Radio City Music Hall, right around the corner from where they put up the Christmas tree every year. So we're in the eye of Manhattan. So we got a great location.
Prime location.
Prime. It's the second biggest tourist attraction in New York City besides Times Square. And like, matter of fact, one of the owners of, I'm not giving him a shout out, but I really have to say this. Jerry Spire, who's like another Donald Trump of Manhattan, who's one of the big owners of Rockefeller Center, when he found out what we were looking to do, he says, Joe, I got a piece of property for you. I'm like, where? Because I was supposed to build this in Brooklyn. He says, right in Rockefeller Center. I
Wow.
said, Jerry, I said, we don't got the money for that. He says, yes, you do. He says, I'm going to give you a piece of property. For 10 years, I'm going to give you a lease for $1.
Oh my God.
I says, Jerry, I tell you what, 10 years from now, if you triple my rent, I swear I won't even spit on your sneakers. But he's a true advocate. You know what? And that's how it all started.
What a mensch.
It was the best. And so we inherited this piece of property in a place we never could have dreamed of. And for 2 years, I worked on this project, designing a new children's learning center. We opened in October 2000, and the pressure was off. I mean, I was under severe pressure. I was working on this project day and night. I wasn't even getting paid for all the time that I put in, but this was kind of like my baby. This was something I really believed in. And about a month and a half after we opened, which was now the end of November of 2000, we got a call that would be nominated for the TEA, T-E-A award at the Emmys. It's for venues of themed entertainment. We were up against Disney World, Six Flags, all these other science centers, and we won this coveted award. And of course, in a million years, where does somebody like me, you know, a bona fide idiot, end up with this big award, right? But you know what? It all goes to show, you know, life has a lot of funny twists and turns.
God has a plan.
God has a plan. Life takes us down roads we didn't know were waiting for us, and life sometimes takes us down roads that changes all of us in ways we never could imagine. And the marvel to all that is, to the people that listen to me, you know what? Don't ever give up on life. Don't give up on life. I don't care where your life is. There's plenty of U-turns and plenty of right turns to make. Hang in there at any cost, as you well know, because life can do that to all of us. You know, who hasn't been on the merry-go-round? Who hasn't been on the merry-go-round of life? Who hasn't been on that big Ferris wheel in the roller coaster, right? So in any event, we win this prestigious award, and I'm spending the rest of my time promoting my learning center. I didn't only want teachers going there on a school trip. I wanted parents going there in the evening, on the weekends, during holidays, on summers. I wanted everybody to get this multi-sensory experience.
So what project came out of that? You started to build
Yes.
The hero.
Yes, well, that's exactly what I was just going to say. Now I'm spending my time promoting the Learning Center, and it's January of 2001. We had just been open for 3 months, and I'm in my office in headquarters. It's start of a new year, 2001, having a cup of coffee and a bagel. The phone rings, a company called Fisher-Price Toys. Dring, dring, fire department headquarters. Hey, how you doing? This is Fisher-Price Toys. I think you got the wrong number. No, we don't. We want to speak to Lieutenant Torrillo. That's me. How can I help you? I'm thinking they must open up a new office in Manhattan. They wanted me to go there and host fire drills. They said, no, it's got nothing to do with that. We want to run something by you might be interested in. Okay, what's that? They said, you got some time to speak? I said, it's 9 o'clock and I work till 6 o'clock and you talk for 9 hours? I said, shoot, what do you got? They said, okay, are you familiar with Fisher-Price Corporation? I think it's a household name in our country. They said, no, more specifically, are you familiar with our little action figures we call rescue heroes that kids love? I said, well, honestly, no. Okay, let us tell you about it. We have a whole line of these little action figures kids love. We call them rescue heroes. A little police officer called Jake Justice, an ambulance attendant called Perry Medic. We have a lifeguard called Sandy Beach, a construction worker called Jack Hammer, a mountain climber called Rocky Canyon, a female firefighter called Wendy Waters, but we want a New York City firefighter to be a new hero. We're going to call him Billy Blazes. And he's going to be specifically a likeness of a New York City fireman, and if you help us design, we'll give you $1 for everyone sold around the world.
Wow.
Well, this is music to my ears, but the money wasn't going to go in my pocket. That money would go in my education program, and I'd use that kind of funding to buy smoke detectors and give them out free to people who'd be willing to listen to me in New York on how to prevent and survive a fire. Just a way of drawing people in if you give them something. So I thought this was going to be great. I said, well, you know what? Here's the deal. I got to run this through the mayor's office, their corporation council, which is their team of lawyers. I can't just agree to this. You know, it could be a conflict of interest. So we sent it all over to City Hall, and Rudy Giuliani, in his infinite wisdom with the corporation council, they figured out a way on how we can enter into this partnership as a city agency with a private company. So in the end of January 2001, I set up a big meeting in headquarters with the Fisher-Price executives, the artists, illustrators, toy designers, and for whole day as I'm talking about what a firefighter looks like with his firefighting clothing that we call bunker gear, you know, the air tank, the air mask, the tools and the equipment. The artists and illustrators and toy designers had easels with art pads and crayons and markers, and as I'm talking, they're drawing. At the end of the day, on their art pad, they got this new action figure, Billy Blazes, fully drawn out. So they take the art the artwork, and they go to the factory, and it took 6 months from January 2001 to July of 2001 to come up with the first mold and prototype.
But when did you get to the presentation? What happened the day it was all going on?
Well, what happened was, after the mold was completed, and it was going into mass production, they wanted to have a press conference. They wanted to introduce the new rescue hero in New York City. Well, this was the end of July of 2001, and they says, okay, where can we have a press conference? I said, well, let's do it at the Fire Zone. They said, what's that? It's a new children's learning center I designed. We won an Emmy Award for it last year. They said, oh my God, can we really do it there? I said, yeah, I'm the director. They says, oh my God, how apropos. We introduced the new children's rescue hero at the new children's learning center. Oh my God, this is getting better and better. They said, okay, we know where we'll do the press conference, but when? I said, well, it's the end of July of 2001. Let's do it in October. They said, why? I said, it's Fire Prevention Month. The longest running health initiative in the world. It goes back to 1871, after they rebuilt Chicago, after Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicked over a lantern and burnt half the city down. They says, oh yeah, it's very appropriate, but it's too close to Christmas on the holiday season. We want to get Billy Blaze on the mark a little bit sooner. Well, this is the end of July of 2001. October was too far away. And I'm brainstorming. I can't think of another date in between that, would be a natural tie to the project. And I'm kind of brainstorming. I said, 911 is an emergency phone number in New York City. Why don't we, for the first time, have a 911 themed safety day and introduce the new children's rescue hero, a New York City firefighter? They said, oh my God, what a great novel idea. So on 911, September 11, 2001, at 9 o'clock in the morning, every TV station, every newspaper reporter, the mayor, the fire commissioner, the city council, were all waiting for me at my learning center in Rockefeller Center to introduce the new rescue hero. Billy Blaze is a New York City firefighter. And that's how the whole day started.
Right. And so 9/11 happens, the first tower, the second tower. What point did you go downtown?
Well, what happened was I had gotten to work about 6 o'clock that morning, and I wanted to catch up on emails and voicemails and scheduling and payroll because I knew I'd be at the office all day long. And it was about 20 minutes to 9, and I looked at I said, oh my God, I'm running late. I lost track of time. And at that point I was, I was kind of getting nervous and having anxiety. I mean, I should have been there already. And I'm getting ready to leave my office, and somebody said a plane just hit the World Trade Center. I'm like, what? Yeah, no, it's on the TV in the conference room next to your office. So I left my office and headquarters. I go into the conference room. The TV's on. I see smoke coming out of one of the towers. I said, what is this, a joke? Is this a movie? Simulation? They said, no, all the news stations are there. I said, and all I'm thinking is, oh my God, every fire truck, every police car, every ambulance is going to be rushing to the scene. I'm going to get stuck in traffic. My boss is going to try to call me. Say, you idiot, you should have been here. Now you're stuck in traffic. All the executives from Fisher Price. This is a big day. This is all going to go down the tubes. And I'm sweating. I'm thinking, just get to this press conference, right? And I zoom out of headquarters with my fire department car. 2 blocks away, I'm on the Brooklyn Bridge going to Manhattan. I'm looking to the left. I can see about 10 floors of fire all around the North Tower. And first I thought maybe, if anything, it was a little Piper Cub. But I'm like, no, this ain't no Piper Cub. A jet had to hit this. Now I got to make an impromptu decision. Who's it going to be? Billy Blazes, or am I going to the World Trade Center, to my firehouse where I started my career?
Right.
I knew they'd be the first ones in the building. They need as much help from everybody and anybody, especially somebody like me who had so much knowledge and experience with those towers. And I diverted to my old firehouse, took off my dress uniform, borrowed a set of firefighting clothing from another fireman who was off duty, because we all leave our fire equipment in the firehouse when we're not working. Tommy McNamara, I had his helmet, his boots, his gloves, his jackets, and I ran out of the firehouse, which was only 150 feet away from the South Tower. That's how close we were. But I had to run past the South Tower in order to get to the North Tower, which was the building that we had just been struck. And as I'm running past the South Tower, it's now 9:03 a.m., a.m., and 9:03 just happens to be my lucky number in life. And as I'm running past the South Tower, I hear a roar, and I look up, and the second jet, United Airlines Flight 175, came right over my head. And it came over my head and slammed into the South Tower. And I'm like, oh my God, we're under a terrorist attack. There's no way that this could be a coincidence.
Right.
2 jets within 17 minutes, 2 different buildings. And the first 3 things I said to everybody that I encountered, I said, we're under a terrorist attack. I said, everybody on the top of the buildings are going to die. I knew we would never get to them, and they could never get down. Trying to rescue them was not even going to be a thought, or an effort. We just had to forego their lives. It was very sad to think that you would make that decision one day as a firefighter and a rescuer, but that's really what it came down to. And then the third thing that I said these buildings are going to collapse. And people are like, what? I said, these buildings are going to collapse. And of course, so many years later, people always ask me, what made you say that? Well, when I went to school, I was taking structural engineering courses as a young kid after high school, and two of my professors in college were working for the concrete contractor on the Twin Towers. They were in charge of all the concrete placement, but they were part-time engineering professors. And they worked for a company called Dick Underhill, who was the biggest concrete contractor in the world. And because of their position with Dick Underhill, they could take us on a class trip, the engineering students, down to the towers when they were going up to study them, because we were studying engineering. And of course, all these memories come back to me on September 11, 2001, for the days I was there studying them. And I realized, as I'm looking at these towers, almost like Superman with X-ray vision, that these buildings with this new novel lightweight design are not going to withstand that damage. But nobody wants to believe me.
Right, so what happened?
So now I'm standing outside the South Tower, and this thought keeps going through my head. The buildings are going to collapse, but when? We got to get everybody out of the towers and the surrounding buildings as fast as we can, and next thing you know, I hear a rumble, and I look up, and I'm right outside the South Tower. I look up, and the building's coming down. And this was like 55 minutes after it was struck, less than an hour. And I said, you idiot, you're the one who knew this building was going to collapse. You put yourself right underneath it. And I just started running, and there was a footbridge over the main thoroughfare in front of the towers. And I thought if I could make it underneath the footbridge, I might find my body. I was just afraid my body would never be found. And I started running as fast as I can. And the building's coming down, what we call a pancake type of collapse. One floor hitting the floor below, 110 times, boom, 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 boom. And as each floor is hitting the floor below, it's puffing air out like a fireplace bellows. And I could feel that air pressure on the back of my neck as I'm running. And I'm just eyeing up that footbridge. And then the air pressure got so strong, it took my helmet off of my head. And my helmet was just flying through the air. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, And my helmet's flying fast, and then I'm running, and it's actually got caught like in a wind current, and looked like my helmet was making a U-turn like a boomerang. I'm saying, if this helmet lands back on my head and I live to see tomorrow, I'm going to play lotto for the rest of my life, But at some point, the air pressure was so strong, they estimated like 200 miles an hour. I don't know how they estimated that. They said it was like a tornado gust. It lifted me off of my feet, and I was just flying through the air, and then a piece of steel hit me in the back of the head and split my head wide open, and then huge slabs of concrete were just hitting my body. With every slab of concrete, more and more bones are breaking, and now I'm buried under the South Tower, and I'm suffocating to death. I got a fractured skull. All my ribs over on this side are broken. My arm snapped in half. My neck and spine is crushed. I'm bleeding internally, and I'm suffocating. There was no air. It was dark at midnight, and I'm buried with all these people, and they're all screaming at the top of their lungs, but we can't see each other. We can't move. And after a while, the screams had turned into cries, cries into whimpers, whimpers into silence. One by one, they had all died, and I'm still breathing. And I had a flashback to the day that I was sworn into the fire department 20 years before. I had this image standing in front of the mayor of New York City with my hand in the air, taking the oath of office on becoming a new fireman, vowing that I'd be willing to lay down my life so that somebody else might live in the discharge of my duties as a new fireman. And I kept on saying to myself, you idiot, you never thought you were going to live up to that vow. Like, what were you thinking all these years? And I said, you know what, it is what it is, And then I realized that I didn't want to die angry, and I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I closed my eyes and I said a prayer. I begged God to make it easy on my family when they got the news, and I actually thanked God for my career, and I told God that I take full responsibility for today. This was my decision to become a fireman. The risk was always there. I never took it seriously, and if it's my time, come and get me. And then after a while, I was in the middle of all these fires, and I thought I was going to burn to death, and I was hoping he would suffocate me, the big brother on the top floor, before I burned to death. Then they found a void. They found 4 of us, and they dug us out. And they put me on what's called a long spine board. They didn't know the extent of my injuries, whether I had a fractured spine and all that other stuff. So they kind of they immobilize you. And they ran with me on a spine board across the street to the shoreline of the Hudson River.
Right.
Boats had come from New Jersey with the anticipation of getting people out of New York City. There was no other way of getting out of New York City. No cars, no buses, no trains. Either you ran to the east side and ran over the bridges, or you hopped on a boat, and the boats took you across the river to New Jersey. That that was how everybody evacuated. So I'm laying on the deck of a boat and they're holding my head closed, and I could hear them, and they're saying, "Oh, this guy's going to die if we can't get him to a hospital." And then there was a loud rumble and a roar, and somebody on the boat started screaming, "Oh my God, here comes the other tower!" Now, a half hour later, the North Tower starts collapsing and millions of shards of glass are raining down on the deck of the boat. Everybody jumps overboard, and I'm strapped to the spine board. I can't move, right? Nobody has time to take me. So with this index finger, I just kind of turned it because I couldn't see because there was so much dirt in my eyes. I just hit the release belt, almost like a seat belt. And now this arm was snapped in half backwards, but this arm, I just kind of rolled on my side and I stuck my arm out because all the glass and pieces, like hail, hail with metal and glass.
Right.
And I stuck my hand out and I felt the doorway. And I jumped into the doorway, not knowing it was the entrance to the engine room. I ended up diving 10 feet headfirst into the engine room, and now the boat's going up and down. I thought the boat was going to go underwater. And my biggest fear ever since I was a kid, that I would die by drowning, because I almost drowned when I was a kid, and I still have that fear till today. I'm not comfortable being in water over my neck. And I'm saying, this can't be happening to me, And then about an hour later, I was losing consciousness. I heard banging on the deck of the boat above, and I heard voices, and somebody came down to start the motors in the engine room, and he stepped on my chest. I let out a loud scream in the darkness. He had a flashlight. I think I scared the crap out of him, and he yelled upstairs to the captain. He said, "There's a fireman down here, and you got to get down. This guy ain't going to make it." The captain came down and says, "Holy crap, start the boat, start the motors, get this boat out of here." Well, the boat skipped across the river, and now I'm in an ambulance, and I black out, and then I wake up, I'm in an operating room, but I don't know where I am. I'm in another state.
Right.
I'm in New Jersey, Jersey City Trauma Center, and I remember about 15 doctors and nurses all around me in the operating room, and they all have scissors, and they're physically cutting all my clothes off of me. And on the inside of our coat, our firefighting coat, we write our name. It said Tommy McNamara. So I was admitted as Tommy McNamara. And for 3 days, they didn't know where I was. I was declared dead for 3 days. Tommy McNamara was home with his wife. They have him declared dead, but he's alive. I'm declared dead.
Right.
Nobody knows what's going on. And there were rumors there were people in other states, and eventually they found me. And by the time the sun went down that night, and the following morning when the sun rose again on the morning of September 12th, people realized that Superman's not real, Batman and Robin's not real, Spider-Man's not real. The only children's rescue hero who ever came to life was Billy Blazes on the morning of September 11, 2001, and that's how the whole day began.
And 343 Billy Blazes.
Yeah, exactly, and 344 was left behind. And I struggled. I was in this deep, dark place for a number of years after that, and I couldn't understand. I was actually angry that God let me survive. And I know some people might not believe that, but I'm telling you on my children that that's the way I was feeling. My thought was that why would God let 343 firefighters march up to heaven all together, right, in this heroic group, but why wasn't I good enough to be with them?
He wasn't finished with you, Joe. You got more work to do.
You know what, Jack? Everybody tells me that because I travel all over the country now, doing a lot of public speaking, and I do a lot of corporate speaking and volunteering and charity stuff. And everybody, wherever I go, they tell me the same exact thing. They say, "Joe, God is not done with you. God has a bigger purpose." And you know what? As I sit here today, I'm starting to believe it and understand it and accept it. And I'm ready for a new life. I hope that I'm in a position one day to help make a big difference for our country and our people, especially like you, supporting the members of the military who've made such a huge effort on our behalf.
Yeah, I'm honored. Thank you, Joey. Just let me say this. The fact that you're here, the fact that you're talking about and sharing your experience, your heartfelt experience, and the truth for how as it was that day for you, reminds us of that one day where all of us remember where we were in that particular day, on that particular moment, where we were, what we were doing. So there is that purpose. And this may be the one time in your life where all of us are right and you're wrong, Joey, that God does have a greater purpose for you and he's not finished. But I want to just a little closing thought about, well, I guess you gave it to us that your 343 gallons went up without you. But, they're all watching over you, Joe. The reason why you're doing all this is maybe they're watching over you and they're cheering for you right now.
I hope so, and I have an obligation, if not a legal one, certainly a moral one, to tell the story correctly and respectfully, and also an obligation to share the story with the people of the United States of America and people outside the country, because you know what, during the 8 months and the 19 days of the rescue and recovery that went on from September 12th until May 30th of 2002, we estimated 500,000 people came from all over the United States, from other countries, and served in every capacity to help us come out from underneath, that horrific carnage at Ground Zero. And people came and served in capacity they didn't even have. People just showed up, from a little town in the Midwest, said, hey, you know what? I don't have any experience. I don't have any skills. I don't have any knowledge. I just want to do my part for America, for New Yorkers. I'll massage your back. I'll pray. I'll cry. I'll hand out supplies. Give me something to do.
Right.
500,000 people came. And you know what? It's my turn to give back to them and share the story and give them an opportunity to hear it correctly and for them to ask any kind of question that they're interested in, and maybe I have that answer.
Yeah. Well, Joey, thank you for your service. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for keeping all the memories alive and keeping it present in today so that we all remember and we will never forget.
Yeah, all right, Jack. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you,
I'm
Joey.
really, truly honored.
As always, God, family, country. Godspeed you all.